other one.
So you were saying.
Yeah, I got it. So we're back in the room. So we took a little pause there for technical blips, beeps, or whatever you want to call them, burps. But we're addressing this, like, we throw out this term, safe space. I threw it out there.
Yeah.
Because for me, I understand what that means. But actually, you were one of the first people that actually really highlighted that to me and showed me what and how important that is.
I used to hear about workshops in London, and when we did them in New York, it happened, where the practitioner just mugs people off and just shuts them up or says, "Oh, you're done," and moves on. And I always thought, like, that is massive for an artist who's come to a place to learn and grow. But I think going back to the first point we were talking about, it's like, yeah, there's loads of people in this industry that are dog shit, but I don't know why we're talking. I don't want to give that my energy. There's so many beautiful souls that just give a shit about art and making art and telling stories, and that's where all my energy's always gravitated towards.
Mm-hmm.
That might be because I'm a male and I've never been put in that vulnerable position of like, why am I going to your loft where your parents are making spag bowl?
See, I, as a male, I've been there. The very first time I went to see an acting agent, he was there. He had a photographer there, and I was about 16, and I'm having like this photo shoot for the agent, and it was slowly transforming into something else. It was like, can you just undo the top button of your shirt?
Yeah.
And then how about you just take the whole shirt off and just wear a vest?
Oh, wow.
And then like I'm there having like pictures in a vest because, you know, like take that, you know, like kind of boy band kind of style. I think that's all right. And then it transformed into, why don't you do it in your pants? And I'm like 16.
What?
And like, yeah, like why don't you just, and I was aware enough to say, no, that's not what I want to do. But at 16, they're still quite tough.
However, if I asked that now, you'd be like, hey,
they're right on. But you know, yeah. But at 6, it is a world out there that is dangerous.
Knew that.
They don't know everything, mate. But it happens to. I don't think it's exclusive to females. I think it happens to
the first headshots I ever did.
They tried to get me in a bath as well. Like if I'm going to finish that story, and I said no. Like that's not what I'm about as an actor. And at that time I didn't tell anyone. Like I should have gone home and said to my parents, 100%. Like this is what's happened. This is that should have. But as a 16-year-old, I wasn't aware enough to do that. I was just aware enough to say no.
How did that affect the next thing you went into? Were you kind of a bit nervous about, oh my god, is this going to happen again?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I did carry with me for a while of like, oh, this industry is a bit dangerous. Like it isn't necessarily, you're not around friendly people all the time.
I was aware of putting somebody in a situation that they possibly felt uncomfortable. I was directing a production of Teachers, and I needed a Gail. And
what's a Gail?
So one of the characters is called Gail.
Oh, okay.
And I had a male character, had one of the girl characters who was dark haired with long hair. So in order to get a contrast, I wanted somebody with short blonde hair. So I'll put it out on, I don't know whether it was Mandy or one of those sort of like internet sort of things, but I got a few responses, and I was struggling to find a space to audition. I'd managed to get some space at the Playhouse, but on this one particular day with this one particular actress, I was struggling, and I happened to have access to a room in the Latin Bush Centre, which is like a complex of sort of like office spaces near here. And that was all I had. And it was just very weird because I picked her up from the station and we were like kind of chatting and driving to this place and then going into this room that I had to unlock with a key. And it was like all very remote, and I felt, oh God, I hope she feels all right. And then we kind of just ran some lines, but she was completely putting all of her trust in me and didn't know me from Adam. And I was, kind of really aware that this was like, I hope this is, she doesn't panic or anything like that. But obviously, I'll just try to make her as comfortable as possible. But it was possibly the the weirdest situation
Mm.
I felt I've put somebody in without meaning to make somebody feel uncomfortable.
So, Ayvianna, what should someone like Jim have been thinking about from the union's perspective? What should Jim have been thinking about in regards to that performer?
I suppose it's you email her beforehand and tell her precisely the address of where she'll be and how long she'll be there and what's expected of her when she is there. I think you probably did all the right things, I would imagine. I think you get a sense quite quickly of when someone is a serious person and when there's something wrong. You can tell quite quickly. I would say it's usually the tone of the messages. I guess that your messages probably have a professional tone.
Yeah.
I've had experiences where I was offered a role by somebody who purported to be a filmmaker. There's so much of this. Again, it was through Mandy or one of these sites. And then he wanted to have a meeting to talk about it, and he said he was texting and sort of DMing me through Instagram, supposedly to talk about the role, which is fine, but there was something just off about the tone of the messages. Like one evening, quite late, he started liking quite a few of my posts, and I noticed, but I didn't say anything. And then in the DMs it said, I hope you don't mind that I went on a bit of a liking spree through your posts. And I said, no, that's fine. And then he said, why, do you want some more?
Oh.
And there's the tone of the messaging is wrong. And then the following day he sent, so supposedly the character was a bit rebellious or something, fine, whatever. He sent me images of t-shirts, and on each t-shirt was a photograph depicting a different sexual position, and sent me like about 10 of these different t-shirts and said, which one of these do you think your character would wear? So it's quite clearly an attempt to get me to say which position I like or some stupid thing, but it's done under the guise of, I'm just discussing the character, that's all, and you think. And the following day I actually decided to call him. I called him, I had his phone number, and I said, look, I think these messages are inappropriate, and if we're going to work together, I can't engage in this kind of texting with you. And as soon as I called him out on it, the job disappeared, and he never contacted me ever again.
Wow.
So I think as long as you're kind of not doing that, as long as you're not that, which it sounds like you weren't. You weren't pressuring her. You went out of your way to make her comfortable. I think he did everything right.
I think it's amazing that you had, and this isn't me putting you or anyone else down as a person, but like you had the guts almost to call him and say, no, this isn't okay, because I think so often people just kind of hope it goes away.
I think the thing is, I'm a bit older now, and I'm 60 films down the line on IMDb.
You're 60.
Sorry, what? Oh my God! What's your regime? That's amazing.
I wish I was 60. I'm 60 IMDb credits down the rabbit hole, so I'm kind of not so desperate anymore. So I sort of nowadays, if I don't get a film, I think, But I think if you go back like 10 years ago, maybe when I was a bit more desperate and you sort of feel like, oh God, I need to get something on my CV, then maybe I would have gone along with it. And I think people do take advantage of people when they are young, and they're in that I hate to say actors' desperation, but people do take advantage of it.
It takes a while to get to know yourself and how you're going to, I guess you've got to look after yourself.
Oh, very much
Don't you?
so.
Yeah.
Is there a way that we can look after each other?
Is there no sort of like safeguarding guidelines that equity kind of can put out?
I mean, we have a whole body of work around safe spaces. At one point, there was a helpline that you could actually call. I mean, you can call and you can report somebody to the union. And yes, I imagine there are guidelines as to. I mean, it's stuff that's mostly kind of common sense stuff, like tell people where they're going to be. Communication has to be professional. You can't ask anyone to take their clothes off, without that would need to have been in writing beforehand, so you could think about it. You can't throw it in on the day as an afterthought. a photographer can never touch you ever. If they want to change your pose, they point or they direct. No one should ever put their hand on you. So there is stuff like that.
Alex, what's it like out there in the world of live entertainment when you're like you go into a lot of places like where pubs, clubs, you're quite I saw like an Instagram post recently and like you're in there with the audience.
Yeah.
How do you feel when you look like you're having a great time?
You do, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to.
Yeah.
And do you know what? Most of the time you are, but sometimes you do get the one dickhead that thinks it's absolutely appropriate to either touch your gear or touch you, and you just think no. And again, I am older, so I will have that more fuck off attitude. I think I just have to look at them and they know that they're completely fucked up. I think that's the teacher in me.
It's the teacher.
It is the teacher. Like, don't touch me. But it worries me. And I was a singing teacher for 20 years. So one of my jobs, one of my roles was to educate my students in this and to be very conscious of safeguarding and to make sure that they understood it, both in secondary schools and commercially. And it amazes me actually that safeguarding doesn't just continue through life. I think it does a lot more now, but everyone should be safeguarded at every point in every job. It doesn't matter the industry, it doesn't matter where you are. I think safeguarding should just be a thing. Just don't be a dickhead. I think that's the thing. Like, and if you do get someone who's like some pissed up knobhead, hopefully the staff of the place, you just kind of have to go, not this one. But again, sometimes it doesn't happen.
Such great advice. Just don't be a dickhead.
That's great.
That's
Show
what I
up and just don't be a dick.
Don't be a
I
dickhead,
feel like I
don't be
need to
bellend,
get
don't
a
be dickhead.
T-shirt made.
This
Just
could
don't
be
be
the
a
motto.
dickhead.
Well, that's what this
Hey.
episode is going to be called.
Don't be a dickhead.
Don't be a dickhead.
I love that. Take him up
Yeah.
there.
Hey, can we get merch?
Yeah, we get merch. Yeah, don't be a dickhead.
Don't be a dickhead, there
Welcome
you
to
go.
the academy. Yeah.
I think
Perfect.
you were saying about like safeguarding as like it continues through adulthood, but in a professional workplace, like a business, in you know most places throughout the UK, you have HR, but in a lot of acting jobs, you don't. Or they say we have HR, but it's not. It's the director is also in charge of HR, or the producer is also in charge of HR, and it's not so clear on where you can go.
I think that's in a lot of freelance jobs as well. You know, well-being is a massive thing, especially for freelancers, because they don't have necessarily that support. I mean, really lucky to have the union.
Oh my god, yeah.
But yeah, a lot of freelancers, like, so in my calligraphy side of things, I don't get any support with anything like that because there's not a union, there's not a thing
I've
to
seen
support.
real graphic design and stuff like that. It's
Yeah.
just nothing. You've got, I suppose, in some respects, you've got organisations like FSB, Federation of Small Businesses. If you sign up to them and they give you sort of like legal, support, but you've got
It's
to
the
pay
business
for
side
it.
of things,
It's the business
isn't
side
it?
of
The
things.
business
It's
side,
not
but the
actual safeguarding.
well-being.
An emotional side of
Safeguarding,
things as well, because you were saying we kind of have to look after ourselves. Is there a way that we can look after each other? And again, it comes back to just don't be a dickhead. Like, as a producer, I think my experiences as an actor, going through things like where I felt quite unsafe or like I was in a dangerous situation, and having worked with people where there is no HR department or it has just kind of sucked. Now as a producer, I'm so, like you were saying about making other people feel unsafe and how aware you are of that, I'm so aware of that now. And when I have actors who are working under me, I'm so aware of, even just to the point of probably being quite excessive with it, saying to them, if there is anything that I'm asking you to do, if there's any material in this play that you are not comfortable with, if anything happens, just tell me. There'll be no questions asked, we'll change it. Because I'm so hyper aware of how, especially in Amdram, which, we do a lot of as performers and things, for fun, to keep creative juices flowing and things, but then also, often that leads to work and things. In that setup, it's very easy sometimes for dynamics to be shifted, and either for people to think, oh, well, we just have to do that because there's no guidelines in place, or go the opposite end and say, well, screw it, I'll just quit because I don't enjoy that. You know, there's a lot of like weird, warped guidelines. I think I'm just very aware of the experiences that I've had, making sure that other people don't go through that at my hands. If that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah.
You're trying to show care, aren't you? You're trying to show care to your fellow artists and performers.
Definitely. And, you know, and like I said, I think sometimes I get quite excessive with it in terms of, you know, not just putting in place safeguarding of our own forms. Like at one point, so in a play I did recently, we had fake firearms in the play, but we were using quite advanced props that were airsofting guns, so they could be loaded. And I got very anally retentive about it, and I made all of the cast sign not contracts but statements of promises I was making to them, where I was saying, like, none of us will ever have things that can be loaded into the gun at any time, either in the rehearsal room or on stage.
So what is this, an airsofting gun?
It's like, so I don't know a huge amount about it, but one of our cast members, who I trust very much, plays airsofting, and it's basically like an extreme form of like paintballing.
Right.
But they are guns, and they can be loaded with things, and you know, it can injure people. People could lose an eye or something like that. I was just so hyper aware of that I was really going to the extent of saying to people and showing people that we cared. And so even though these aren't real guns, I brought in a safe, and the guns after every show would be locked in the safe, and there was only I and one other person who was our stage combat manager who had access to the safe. Before every show, we'd get them out and put them in the places for the actors to collect them. Each actor was assigned their own prop. None of the actors were allowed to touch another person's prop. It was, we really were meticulous on it, which was probably overkill. However, we even informed the local police station in case someone, you know, drove past whilst we were having a rehearsal and saw that we had these guns, or, you know, anything.
And what
like
was the core of you doing all of this,
to make people feel
checks?
safe.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want anyone in my company to think that I was cutting corners, even if they thought it was overkill. I wanted people in my company to feel safe and to feel like, and also if anything did go wrong, to say we've done X, Y, Z to try and make sure that this didn't happen.
Cover your own asses.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's important, isn't it?
So we've started off this conversation making the whole. I think we are making it sound all quite scary. The whole being a performer.
It is, man. It's
like,
terrifying.
It is, isn't it? It's
No,
like
but
quite, there's some worrying sides to it. But is there a way that we should be like looking to come out of our comfort zones? Because how do we do that? How do we do that as artists? Go into a place where we're not completely safe all the time, and go to somewhere different that can be new and exciting. Again, like Niall, how do you send actors out there able to embrace what they don't know with this scary world?
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? So I'm sure everyone's read that thing about what Ray Fiennes has said and what Matt Smith said about the whole trigger warning thing, and about like, well, they shouldn't have them. Then people's point is, well, if you don't need them, then they're not for you, so just walk past them. But they are for some people, so we have to embrace, make everyone feel supported. It's such a weird one, isn't it? It's because I think, and people mentioned before, like when you're working in this industry that's so vulnerable and it's so scary, like you said before, I think communication is a big part of it. But I don't know, like a lot of the jobs we put our actors up for, they're in professional spaces that there are no corners, there are no like things being cut. So it's a real tough one. But it's annoying that we have to say things like just don't be a dick, because there are so many people out there that try to like earn a quick buck or like the cough's back or screw people over. I just don't understand. I don't. But maybe it's because I left drama school like 17 years ago, and I've had loads of beautiful experiences, and the dickheads that mess me about just aren't around anymore, because I think word spreads, and I think if you're going out there with an intention to tell stories or work with artists or fill buildings with these beautiful narratives, that's going to last the test of time.
So you're saying we have some responsibility in ourselves
100%.
to make sure that we're avoiding the negativity and the dangerous.
Yeah.
But isn't what the whole thing about, you know, if you're in it for the right reasons, then intent is going to be good anyway.
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
right,
if you've got people who are thinking, oh, I know a quick way of getting a woman to take her top off, I'll pretend to be like a photographer or something like that. They're not doing it for any particular reason apart from their own satisfaction and their own gratification. If you're in it for the art, then you're naturally going to be from an environment where you are with like-minded individuals. You do have a narrative that you all communicate through, and you see things from, as you say, through the art, as opposed to, oh, this is like a quick buck, or this is like a cheap thrill sort of thing. So I suppose when you say, you know, when companies have got more credibility, and they have got the HR department, the stunt department, everything is much more professional, then people will naturally kind of go, oh, it's a proper thing, isn't it? So
also
you would walk into it feeling much safer.
But now, if you do something wrong now, it'll be online in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So if you are like running workshops and making people get naked, word will get out in 20 minutes. I'll be fucked in 10. Like it won't build. It won't work. So there's the accountability factor that we live in now, which we're so lucky to do that. But I think like I think you can tell when you meet someone, especially in the world of acting or storytelling, like who's the good egg. And also people talk. It's weird, like when sometimes we get like say 15 followers in one go, and I go, there's 15 or there's 16 actors together, and they're talking about workshops in London. And someone goes, Lonesome's quite good, and it just goes because word spreads.
That's what's happening with this as well with the podcast.
Yeah.
I'll bring someone into this podcast now, and then I'm finding like 10 or 15 people all of a sudden follow or are messaging me saying, "Oh, can I be part of that?"
Yeah, I love that.
And it resonates. The positivity resonates.
100%.
And
after
the negativity
after that initial email going, I'm not. I've just started a podcast. Can you come to the Start Theatre? Just be me and you and a camera.
Are you not worried about the safeguarding side of that as well?
Not with him.
We've been through it. We've been through it all, haven't we?
I think you're right. I think like the integrity, the intentions of people, and also work. It's famous saying in this industry that work leads to work. I've got far more acting jobs from word of mouth and working with people than I ever have from auditioning with strangers. A lot of my favourite jobs and my more successful quote unquote jobs have come from doing a play, and then there's one person in that play who then goes on to do another project, and they recommend me for that project, who then is working with that person, so they recommend me for that project, and vice versa. And I quite like that.
100%.
I love that connection and that community and that like interwoven. Everyone says this industry is quite incestuous, and it is.
Oh yeah, but any industry is incestuous.
Yeah.
You kind of I know people from like the lighting world.
Yeah.
Sorry,
the
the
street
what
lights,
world?
the lighting, street lights, internal lights, and stuff like that.
That's interesting.
And there's only like about 8 companies in the UK, but they all kind of like move around each other. So it's like if you're within an industry, you will float around similar sort of circles because you've got a background, you've got a knowledge that is transferable.
But the people that are good to work with will always be the ones that you want to work with again. And again, when I was a teacher, the one thing I used to teach the kids that was really important, and the adults I taught, was again, don't be a dickhead, because if you're working somewhere, you might not actually be the best person in that audition. You might not. There might be someone that walks in that is superb, but they've worked with them before and they are a dickhead.
Yeah.
And they've worked with you before and you're not.
Yeah.
And you'll get it because they want to work with you.
100%,
because they appreciate your work ethic, the fact that you work hard, the fact that you get the job done, the fact that you're willing to work to actually do it. So that's
100%.
Yeah, I totally
massively
agree.
important.
When I first left drama school, I used to write letters to all the people at National Theatre, and I wrote to Simon Russell Beale, who is Monster, and he rang me up the next day and he said, "Hello mate," and I've just left drama school, I was like 21, 22, and he said, I'm at the National tomorrow, do you fancy a cup of coffee at 12? And I was like so gassed, so I met him and he said to me, "Good news travels fast, but bad news travels even faster." And he said, the reason why I work constantly, and it wasn't an ego thing, he said, it's because I give a shit, I care about this job. And now he's played Lear, Hamlet, but he's played every role he's played. and work with the same directors because he's got a heart of gold. And I remember when I spoke to my mum about that, she was like, "I'll be careful." Like he's like, he was 50 at the time, whatever. He was known as this like iconic, quite gay man. And my mum was like, "He might be trying to like chat you up and stuff." And I was like, "I don't know, Mum. I look like a door, so I don't think that's the case." And then I met him, and it was so. And he was like, he brought me coffee, and he wasn't like, "Oh, come and let me show you my dressing room." He just was normal. Yeah. And he got me loads of meetings at the National, which I then fucked up. But it was like, it was so beautiful that he was such a loving man.
Yeah.
But the advice stands, like, people talk about, it doesn't happen as much now, but before the pandemic, you get loads of phone calls from like producers or like directors, and then my name would be on someone's CV, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're on Bob's CV, what do you think of Bob?" And once it was for a gig at the Courts, it was a big gig, and I was like, to be honest, he's a knob. Yeah. He's a knob. And she was like, "Okay," and then they went with someone else. Yeah. Because it's like, I can't be recommending people because I don't owe people shit. No. And he was a knob, and then the play was massive as well, transferred and all this stuff. It's like he could have been on that. But I think, well, then don't be a dick. And word travels, and your name on CVs is a big thing. It's like just show up, be the nicest person.
When you said that you went to a few things, but you fucked it up. What happened? What's the story behind that?
Just it could be hours for this. I used to go to auditions and do everything apart from the prep, because I was so scared of failure. So I thought, if I don't work really hard and I fail, it's because of whatever reason. I auditioned for the lead in a play at the National, and it was myriad, who I think is the best director, and I think it was Tom Morris, two massive directors, and Alistair Kumar, who's the head of casting at National now. And I was so nervous. My mum, well done mum, went, "Why don't you just have a few whiskies before you go in?" So I had 3 whiskies and turned up pissed. But I thought, because the show was ginormous, I'll be in a massive auditorium, so I won't smell it. And they were like, I was at the NT studio, and the room was like half the size of this, and they were there, and I went hi, and I thought, they can smell my fucking breath, and I stunk of like hard whiskey. And the worst thing was, the play had been published, so I took in the play, and I knew what scene they were going to do, which was the main scene. And then Tom Morris went, "Oh," because I got the play, he said, "Oh, we won't do it from that." And I went, no, it's fine. And he was like, "Okay." As in, like, we've edited the play since it's gone live, so what you're going to read now is the old version. So we got 2 pages in, and obviously it wasn't matching up what they had and what I had. And I was like, "Yeah, can I have the actual script?" It's like the worst thing ever. Didn't get that job either, which is no surprise.
But you learned something.
Learned loads, but I think that's
don't have 3 whiskies before.
Yeah, but all them stories are just dreadful. A lot of them are just revolting, but they make me, I think now, a better coach or a better person. I work with a lot of grads, and I say to a lot of them, like, "Here's just some tips. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this." Like, I used to go to auditions late. Remember Nick Heitner? I met Nick Heitner at the National, and he went to me. I think it was for Oedipus with Ray Fiennes, and I was about a minute late, and I turned up, and I wasn't even running. I just walked up towards the door, and Nick went, "Hey Niall," and I was like, "Yeah." He went, "Cool. You Bob, whatever. Let's go." And I was like, No, I'm here for the thing." He said, "Yeah." He said, "You're like, I'm not going to wait for you. I run the National Theatre. Cheers, Bob, let's go." And then Bob went in, and I just stood there. And I had to ring my agent, who was now is one of the